Hey everyone, you are watching the Misery Loves Company social reading series. Every Friday night we have readings from transgressive and outsider writers. I guess. There, I did that one fast. Anyway, it's a special one tonight though because tomorrow is Misery Tourism editor Rudy's fucking birthday. Rudy, happy few hour early birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, man. Anyway, do you wanna say a few words on the event of your at the anniversary of your birth here, man?
Mm, Not really. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. Are you gonna read today?
I had something I was planning on reading, but I'll wait till the open mic.
Gotcha. We don't have that many people signed up. Actually, I think we only have one person technically signed up, so it won't be that long until the open mic. Um, which I guess is as good a segue as any to Mike. So you're the one person who signed up for tonight.
Nice.
Okay.
Excellent.
So you're going to read a new piece, right? That just you just
Yeah, I
published a few
this
days.
I wrote this a couple days ago, kind of like a random semi-inspired by a dream I had. Might turn into the basis for a longer thing, but I felt I hadn't put anything on my blog in a while, so I just stuck it on there. Um, but yeah, so I figured I'd give this a read to test out these words. Cool. So it's called From Ort, and it is a little short story. Definitely want to highlight the picture I found in the NASA Astronomy Photo of the Day archive. Highly recommended website visit for those who are not familiar with APOD. All right. The woman stood at the window and looked up into the night sky. The window was old and frigid air seeped through the tiny cracks around the panes. A cigarette burned slow and forgotten in the fingers of the hand resting low beside her thigh. The man in her bed also smoked, drawing the cigarette down in quick bursts, almost like he was nibbling at it as he watched her stare out the window. Shut the curtains and come back to bed, he said. No. The man brushed the end of the cigarette into the glass ashtray on the bedside table. Bits of ash sizzled as they hit the centimeter-deep water at its center. The woman left ashtrays all around her house because she was the kind of person that smoked indoors, and the man was amused when he first discovered that she kept small amounts of water in each of them. That amusement was gone. All he wanted her to do now was to close the curtains, to return to bed, to return to him. I don't know why you keep looking. Nothing's changed. The woman grinned. Her teeth, the color of lemons, visible in the dark. Everything has changed, my love. Her eyes still in the window, she continued. Let's go outside and get a better look. You can wear my robe. Absolutely not. But you love my robe. I don't want to look again. I'm sick of looking. I think it looks amazing. Good for you. The man felt the anxiety pool inside him when she spoke about going outside. Anxiety like a flooded basement. The animal urge to seek higher ground. But that wouldn't help now. The soaring heights were the very problem. Variations of this conversation played between them, night after night. For almost 2 months they'd tugged this string. Still, despite his protestations, despite the dark gravity of his arms after they made love, through it all they made love, perhaps more often than at the start of their relationship. Despite the whimpers like a dog in the rain at the door, she left him behind and stood at the window and gazed up into the sky. Most nights he grunted and coiled in the sheets, and she wouldn't return to bed until long after he'd fallen asleep. But sometimes she stood at the window or went out to sit in one of the wooden chairs in the back lawn and watched the sky until the sun came up and only the most brilliant of the comets, with the longest tails blue and white and green and purple, splashed against the immensity of the universe, persisting throughout the day. It was why the man hated leaving her apartment or his house unless he covered his face, kept his eyes on the ground, and refused to discuss the comets. At work, he'd taken a desk in the center of the workspace, far from the windows where his colleagues fought over the best vantage points. Why they wanted to look at the comets, the man had no idea. One of them, or all of them, could be headed straight for Earth, countless eyes descending from the edge of the heavens. The woman turned from the window and walked over to the bed. She sat on its edge but faced away from the man. Why are you afraid? She asked. I'm not afraid. You are. It's perfectly natural. I'm not. You don't need to be all tough guy about it. That's bullshit. Talk to me. It's not fear. It's a reality. The man grew more animated. He lit another cigarette, and when he set the lighter on the bedside table, it slipped off and clattered away beneath the bed. What the fuck are we going to do? Who? About what? Us. Humanity. All these fucking comets in the sky. They say there are millions of them, flooding the solar system. An invasion. The man felt his heart and mind descend into open rebellion, a chimpanzee at the bar of the cage, frightened by flashes of light he did not understand. Words rushed to the gate of his mouth. And like they're talking about fucking ghost planets or black holes at the edge of the solar system, throwing all this stuff our way. Something about disrupting the Oort cloud. And then you get people on TV talking about how one of them might hit us and end the world, kill us all in a flash. The woman turned toward the man and reached out for his cigarette. He handed it to her. She stood again and drew in a long drag before dropping it into an ashtray on the dresser, rendered silent with a swift hiss. Sure, she said. We could all die. Die bathed in beauty. A cathedral of light. Like going in the arms of God. What the hell are you talking about? The woman laughed. It was a deep laugh and reminded the man of the way a large ship thrums against the power of the sea. Just acknowledging something, said the woman. Nothing is too special to resist change. Nobody is excluded from dying. So what are we supposed to do? Do? Like you and I? Go outside and watch the lights. Talk about which ones we like best. Get excited and go back to bed. And stop worrying about the fucking curtains. The woman walked to a closet door and took a gray plush robe from a hook, then drew it around her. Last chance, she said. The man's eyes were on the wall beside the bed. The taste of tobacco lurked in his mouth like an unwelcome guest, and he couldn't decide if he should go throw up in the bathroom or chase whatever dreams of darkness and gravity awaited him in sleep. No thanks, said the man. Your loss. When the woman passed through the door to the back door, or when the woman passed through the house to the back door, she took a pack of cigarettes and a lighter from the counter. She kept the icons of her habit everywhere. There was comfort in the regularity of the habit, especially in these uncertain times. Once on the porch, she lit a cigarette, sat down on the wooden planks, and laid back. She began to count the comets. After she reached 300, she flicked the long extinguished cigarette away and yawned. She wished the man was with her, there to hold her hand and talk about which comet tails colors he liked best. When the comets first appeared, he was more open to the activity, favoring the greens and teals. But as the comets grew more numerous, he receded ever deeper, pleading more often for her to close the curtains and draw the blinds. She wanted him to be free of this. Maybe she needed to kick him out, she thought. The woman took another cigarette from the pack and lit it. There's no rush tonight. The interplanetary rush of the comets rendered invisible by the woman's earthly eyes and her place in the universe. I'm where I need to be, she thought, and so were they. And that's it. Thank you.
Wow, that first of all, your delivery is always so fucking good. I wish like when I read that I could do what you do, like just like the way you carefully control your intonations and stuff is spectacular. But more than that, that was like some serious big mood shit for me. As someone like who's felt more and more escalating anxiety over the course of this pandemic, like it really perfectly captures that sensation of like death being this kind of ubiquitous thing, or at least like threat being this sort of ubiquitous thing, right? And you having to just sort of live and exist in the presence of this constant like right on the cusp of apocalypse, I guess, right? No, it was very good and really like very much feels of this moment, you know?
Yeah, that was definitely from a cluster of pandemic-inspired, sort of like weird tone nightmares I've had. But that one kind of stuck with me after I woke up, and I was able to get most of the details down. I think there was some conversation in the dream. Like I don't think I dreamt that conversation, but there was some weird interplay. But a sky full of comets in the daytime, which I mean has technically happened in human history, like great comets where you'll be out in midday and there's just a huge fucking comet in the sky. People were just terrified of it. So yeah, but no, glad you guys liked it.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I really love the idea of like agoraphobia mixed with that like cosmicism type, like the Lovecraftian, like we're small in the universe, that kind of thing. Because that's so like, it's so awesome, like just such an awesome idea. And I feel like that's what Lovecraft kind of, I feel it just captures that whole essence of like Lovecraft and that kind of stuff, that weird, like, like basically knowing our place in the universe, but at the same time, like our place is pretty much, a small, a small dot. I really like that.
Thank you.
Lovecraft would absolutely have been inside hiding under the covers in those.
That's what I'm saying.
All right. So now it's open mic time, I guess. Rudy, do you want to go first, or do you want to go later? I mean, it's your birthday, so you could do whatever you want, I suppose.
I'll just let anybody who wants to jump in can jump in, then I'll read whenever everybody's done.
Does anyone have?
I have one thing.
Cool. Who's that?
Me, Josh.
Oh, there you are. It didn't. My screen didn't change.
Yeah. No, only because I think we were talking about cyber writing before, and like I had this idea of stories that are hyperlinked, and I think I mentioned, and like.
Oh yeah.
And Expat, actually, it was scheduled for today. Manuel didn't publish it. His schedule's whatever. He says it will go one day. It might go earlier. It might go later. So I was supposed to have.
I know from our standpoint on Misery Tourism, I tried pretty hard to avoid telling anyone a date. I try to tell them like it'll go up sometime next week, because a lot of times it's tricky because Rudy and I alternate putting up the pieces, and also you might have a situation where you're actually accepting submissions for that week right up to the very last minute, or a piece needs art and the person wants to provide it. Anyway, there's so much shit that so I could.
It was no shade. It was no shade at Manuel, because he's like just someone I really respect, and I'm so flattered to be in there. But it was going to come up today. But it didn't, and I feel like there's no shame in reading it now, because so basically last time I read the piece that referenced porn shot outside of an office.
Right.
And this is now the origin story, and this is the story that story will link back to, thus creating what I would argue is the first tangible example of cyber writing. But again, this is very much disputed among cyber writing.
The first example with an asterisk, right?
Yeah. So, but this is the origin story of that, and it's all from this, and as well as Florida Man, which I don't know if any of you read or whatnot. Also on Expat, they were all. I tried writing a novella and it failed, but it's been encouraging because I've now had 3 pieces from that novella. Like so I think it's encouraging, and you should write garbage, and it might yield 3 small pieces in very minor literary journals, which should be an encouraging story for anybody. So this is cyber writing. Gordon Ramsay. Every day you're late to work by exactly 8 minutes. It's kind of like being on time, you think. Nobody says anything, and ever since your desk was moved closer to the entrance, there haven't been as many people to walk past and be late in front of, fewer witnesses. Unlike you, the man in the black V-neck sticks to no discernible routine. He appears at random, and sometimes you don't see him for months at a time. Today, he shows up at 10 a.m. Your office is on the 6th floor of a converted textile factory, directly across from a boutique hotel with balconies and big glass windows. The man in the black v-neck is standing on one of the balconies, smoking. During the Toronto International Film Festival each year, the hotel becomes a destination for movie stars trying to keep a low profile. The rest of the time, like on this spring day, porn production companies rent out the suites. You've tried searching all variations of Toronto hotel porn on Pornhub, but haven't found any videos that look like they were shot at the hotel. You've come across some pretty good stuff, though. You think of somehow asking the man in the black v-neck. Everyone calls him Gordon Ramsay because he's always wearing a black v-neck like the celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay, about where to find the videos. He's one of the people who rent the boutique hotel suites to shoot porn in, so he should know. Gordon Ramsay tosses his cigarette onto people or cars or cement or whatever is below and steps back into the hotel. He isn't gone long, though, and you're the first to notice his return because your desk faces the most active porn-making suite. Another perk of your new seating arrangement. This time, Gordon Ramsay has a camera, and he isn't alone. She seems nervous, and when she realizes everyone in your office is now watching from the windows, she puts her hands up to cover herself, but only for a second. The flicker of chastity seems endearing to you and also kind of sad. You realize that this sadness isn't a progressive sort of sadness, and most likely springs from your repressed upbringing. You're also pretty sure it erodes your ally status and maybe somehow supports the machinations of the patriarchy in an indirect but meaningful way. But the way she put her hands up, it was just for a second. And then one of your colleagues, someone you classify as a theater person, holds up a sign they've made for such occasions. It says applause. And yeah, that's Gordon Ramsay.
Great ending on that one. No, I love the long lingering exploration, yeah, of like the act of her momentarily covering herself. Like, what instinct would be at play there? You know, what other like self is? I don't know. It's fantastic. I really like that. I really like when a piece slows way down and just ruminates on this one odd quirk of human behavior. You know.
Yeah, thank you. I felt like I seemed like an incel for writing that because it's, autobiographical. I mean, it was sad. This actually happened. It was sad. It was sad because she did that. I wouldn't think it was sad if a girl was shooting porn in a hotel across the office from me and she seemed fully into it. You know what I mean?
Right.
That would not. It was sad because she was kind of like that instinct, and it was just like, oh, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. I don't know. I mean, I'm sex positive, so I don't care. But
just that like glimpse of cognitive dissonance, whenever you can catch that in life, it's just, I think that's where literature lives, right? In those moments when you see honest to goodness cognitive dissonance at work out there in the world.
yeah, and it was there. And so, I mean, I'd like to mark the occasion, and I would argue that this was one of the first times that cyber writing was delivered in a reading. Again, people might dispute, but so thank you for giving me a platform.
Yeah, absolutely. No, glad to have you read. I see Jake's unmuted his mic, so he might want to, I want to give him a chance to comment if he wanted to say something before I move. Nope, he muted his mic again. Never mind.
Nothing to see here.
I try to give people a chance to say something if I catch it. So I see Derek, Jake, and David have all said that they have something they might want to read.
Yeah, Derek actually has a book coming out with Los Angeles Tyrant. I think it's coming out in 2023.
Shit.
Yeah.
That's not a real thing.
This is not a real thing.
Wait, what? Hold on. Well, real or not, Derek, you're gonna have to explain it, and you've got the floor next anyway. So
I'm not gonna explain Steven's ridiculous jokes, especially not during recording hours. There is no such thing as Los Angeles Tyrant, and I have no book forthcoming. So I'm gonna read a piece that came out. Yeah. Well, that's what forthcoming means, right? Isn't that what? All right. I'm going to read a piece that came out last week on the Babel Tower notice board, which is a British experimental flash and poetry place, so that makes me an international author. And I'll link it in the chat. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great. You sound great.
Cool. Awesome. All right, so this is, I started a piece where I was writing a short story about a cult. I got really bored of myself and realized that the reason I was bored is I just wanted to write the ending. I just wanted to write the moment when they make you drink the thing. So this is called A Final Act in Flame. The remnants of the fire, ash, soot, char, stubborn wet leaves, betrayed the beauty we all witnessed earlier, right here on this land, when the flames plumed orange waves before all of our bright, eager faces. The putrid, lingering incense wafts through the evening air long after the smoke subsides. Our bare feet, once brash bodily instruments dancing atop the smoldering, adjust themselves to this new landscape of cracklings, collecting residue and goo, exhausted anchors seeking into the freshly barren earth. A desecration occurred once our wandering hordes came upon the land with little left to destroy. I ordered the young boys to encircle the last tree, a solemn pine, and fill their mouths with accelerant, wishing for some of them to drink the toxins greedily, knowing their tongues were parched. The more patient and wise of the boys spat the fuel on the tree as I lit the match. A fine fire ensued. Alana made love to the boys whose stomachs were now rotten, whose insides were corroding from impatience and an ignoble ignorance that all substance that is wet must be good for nourishment like water. When she finished with a boy, we had stronger hands throw them onto the pyre, one by one, until the bark flesh and their flesh were one. The flames accepted our meat and rewarded our small party with splendor. In the morning, the fog rode up the hills slowly, returning to be sky, and the whole of the land, after an evening of Philistine, revealed itself onto us. There was at last nothing left to burn. There was at last nothing left to eat. There was at last nothing left to drink. While the remainder of our party chanted or chewed on twigs to pass the hours before succumbing to the terror, I sat peacefully. When I calmed myself of any fear of shouts in the distance or murmurs of insurrection among my own coterie, I allowed for my eyes to open, stood for the residuum of the waning existence gathered before me, and spoke. These are the final words. Drink them and be full. We smite creation as it is called unto us from the darkness where we lay peacefully. We smite creation as it ushered us into its womb unwitting, blind to its machinations. 1,200 years ago, a prophet came to us. She foretold oceans swallowing our lands. She foretold our star paling before our eyes. She foretold masters seeking the tongues of our brothers and sisters as a great delicacy. And she foretold of us serving our tongues to these masters happily. All of this and more came to pass. Today we smite creation as it demands we reproduce itself in perpetuity to satisfy its insatiable appetite. An appetite for what? An appetite for suffering, for pain, hunger. Today we offer our final act of suffering, the last bits of our pain, the final echoes of our hunger to the God of creation so that it might be well and full. And as the belly of creation grumbles with pleasure, may creation look down upon us, this land, this animal, this water, this mineral, this fire that warmed its nights and soothed its pangs, and find nothing. No suffering to eat, no pain to drink, no hunger to caress, no existence to feed on. Nothing save the void which creation demanded over and over, we, its thrall. Bill, let us rest.
That is like so wildly like stylistically different from anything of yours that I've seen before. And that's awesome. Like I think I it's really like it's really great when you can see an author like produce work that's just totally different from what you expect from them, because it speaks to like your breadth, right, as a writer, and your ability to be able to like one of the things I'm most envious of is there are some writers who can like cultivate a voice, use that voice, throw it away, and then cultivate a completely new and different voice. And that, I don't know, that's just what struck me about that piece. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely an odd, weird piece for me, but I went to enough church growing up where I can make it sound like something.
I hear you.
I found it so weird that like we both in my piece and yours used the word machinations, and we both pronounced it correctly, which seems really rare. I honestly only learned how to pronounce that like literally the other day, even though it was in my fiction. And it's also, I was speaking about it with a girl the other day, and she was like, well, because we were talking about words that are often mispronounced. And one of them is, for instance, flaccid. It's not flaccid, it's flaccid. There's two C's. Placid is one C. Flaccid has two C's. One of the
I disagree.
And well, you can look it up, and that's the original.
Well, it's functional, and I'm Dickinsonian, so.
So, but yeah, she was like, well, I mentioned machinations in terms of like a thing that I had been pronouncing wrong forever. Same with flaccid. You can look it up. Nobody believes me.
I believe you. I believe you totally.
But you guys, you pronounce about wrong. Do you know what I mean? So it's just
Yeah, you've been saying the all
shit.
night.
This isn't a Canada thing. This is
Shots fired.
but
Wow.
to get back to the point was yeah, she was like when I said, oh, I just learned how to pronounce machination, she's like, well, how often is that even going to come up? And this is an example of, well, yeah, it does come up. And I hate that that's like my only comment on your work, which was great, but yeah, just yeah, machinations.
Now, before you guys start a fucking international war between the US and Canada here, I would remind you that it's Rudy's birthday and he literally lives on the border, and you don't want him to be a casualty, okay?
Where does Rudy
Also,
live?
I don't care how it's supposed to be pronounced. I'm on Team Flaccid. That's just a more elegant, like, just
yeah,
like.
it sounds dirtier the way Josh
I'm just
said
letting
it.
you know right now, I'm making a clip of you saying I'm on Team Flaccid.
I mean, if you hate language and correctness,
I actually do hate language. Language has fucking fucked me over so many times that I have a seething contempt for it. Anyway, I think Jake is up next, and then David.
All right. This is a short, it's unfinished. It's just like an excerpt of a short story I've been working on for a collection I'm putting together. So it is rough draft. And when I say rough draft, I mean I haven't gone through it at all to edit anything. So we'll see how it goes.
Even better.
Yeah.
this is flaccid, kind of.
Yeah, no, we're still at the phase where, like, for anybody watching this video in the future, where there's entire sentences which don't relate to anything that just need to come out, things like that. But I figure I'll kill some time. Jared hated being Todd's boss because he couldn't fire him. When people were bad at their job, Jared had to either make them better or get rid of them. He preferred making them better. It gave him and the employee a sense of accomplishment. He felt motivational, like the work he was doing was improving people's lives instead of him just killing the whole day, porn scrolling through Tumblr, hoping to strike up a conversation with someone at least pretending to be a woman. If people didn't improve things, things were easier. There are very few people who know and understand all the rules of their place of employment. Even fewer people follow all of those rules all of the time. Jared knew that he could always find a reason to thin the herd. People show up late, use personal use of company internet, steal pens and post-it notes, personal use of the copying machine, clock in before getting their coffee instead of after, and then there were metrics. Metrics were the only thing that Jared really cared about. Some numbers need to go up, other numbers need to go down. Calls completed, calls per hour, call length, leads generated, lead to sale conversion, and call quality scores. Todd was hyper-professional. He wore suits and carried a briefcase. He was always on time. He got his coffee before clocking in, brought his own pens and post-it notes to work, never used a copying machine, and didn't browse the internet while on the clock. He just sat there quietly doing his work. The problem was that when you're supposed to be selling things over the phone to senior citizens, namely hearing aids, quiet is the opposite of what you need to be. You gotta have a voice, man. Project your power. I mean, I shouldn't say this, but let's be real. Between me and you gotta have some fucking balls, man, Jared told him. Yes, of course, Todd said. His eyes drifted to the floor as he nodded. I get it, man. You don't come from sales. Dale told me you were a paralegal or a lawyer or some shit before he hired you on. An accountant. Yes, an accountant. So you know numbers, and you know how they work. And the truth is, it don't matter if you're friends with my boss or his cousin or whatever the hell that situation is. My numbers got to go up. They got to get bigger. You know how they get bigger? You making sales. Now it's my job to make you make the numbers go up. Did I ever tell you about my triple F method? Jared said, reaching his unwashed hand into the dish of M&Ms on his desk, the hand that just prior to this meeting had been massaging his cock as he engaged in daddy-daughter text roleplay on Tumblr. He grabbed a handful and tossed them into his mouth and began chewing as he slid the dish towards Todd. No, thank you, Todd said. Triple F. Feel, felt, found. No matter what kind of bullshit line Granny Smith tries to feed you on why she's on a fixed income or she has to speak with her husband Elmer first or whatever, you handle it. Overcome the objection, jump on it, and destroy it like a fucking tiger, he said, pouncing forward, slamming his hands onto the desk. Todd sank back into his chair, covered his face, and Jared raised his eyebrow, cocked his head to the side, and slowly sat back down on his chair. Jesus Christ, man, I'm not going to hurt you. You okay? Todd uncoiled himself in the seat and brushed non-existent dust from his tie. Yeah, sorry. Todd nodded, tossed more M&Ms in his mouth. Jared nodded, tossed more M&Ms in his mouth, and continued talking as he chewed. So let's say you got Granny Smith on the phone, and she's all, oh, I'm not sure if I want to enroll in your program. My current hearing aid works just fine. How do you deal with that? What do you say? Todd shook his head. Well, tell her we have a money-back guarantee. Wrong. Jared smacked the desk. Todd's bodies clenched and sweat started to appear on his forehead. Wrong, wrong, wrong. If she says she's already got a hearing aid, you give her the old triple F. Feel, felt, found. The tone in his voice changed to a much softer, caring tone as he continued. Granny Smith, I get that you feel nervous about switching products. You know that what you have works, I understand. Many of our customers felt the same way. But when they did finally switch, what they found was that their old hearing aid wasn't actually working as well as it should have been. The clarity of your grandchild's voice. What was their name again? Oh, yes, Genevieve. I knew it was something pretty. I just couldn't remember. You know how it is. Listen, I'm just saying that if little Genevieve's voice sounds half as sweet as her grandmother's, it's not something I think you want to risk missing out on. You don't want to miss out on that, right? You got that, man? Feel, felt, found. These old ladies eat that shit up. Now get out there and make the numbers go up. Todd, back in his cubicle, closed his eyes and listened to 83-year-old Marjorie Evans tell him about the sailing trips she took with her husband Norman on their anniversaries. She told him about their grandchildren and their children and their grandchildren, her favorite game shows, foods, and the lady she met with every week to play bridge. Todd listened to her voice go into his ear and imagined it wrapping himself around his brain like a soft, warm blanket. He imagined his mother tucking him into bed as she told him that everything would be all right, that she wouldn't let anything bad happen to him. He thought about the scars on his body and the night he'd gone to Club V, a night he couldn't get rid of. Club V was the last surviving men's bathhouse in the city, a 24-hour spot where guys could meet up and find themselves turning out some suburban pastor or in the middle of an amphetamine-fueled orgy. an utterly scandalous location where all the things gays in the city council didn't like to acknowledge took place. When he first came out in his early 20s, he went through what he called his hoe phase. He wore short shorts, embellished a lisp, and did everything in the book to throw out a big old sign letting everyone know exactly what he was looking for. After a life as long as he could remember living under his father's cruel eye of judgment, he felt strong, free, and untouchable. So when he heard about Club V, he knew he needed to see it for himself. And after spending most of a night there, drinking and fucking, he got on a bus and watched the pre-dawn city pass him by as he smiled, rested his forehead against the glass, and nodded off to sleep. And that's all I got so far.
I love the thought of, of someone selling hearing aids to the elderly over the I'm tongue-tied. Selling hearing aids to the elderly over the phone. That's like such a brilliant, like, can you imagine a more dystopian like profession than having to sell hearing aids to the elderly over the phone? And the dialogue was just hilarious. And like I saw Rudy, he posted in the chat that he could like vividly see this asshole, and I felt the same way. Like I know exactly who this asshole is.
Yep.
Those assholes are real. That's the thing.
Yeah, I clocked out of work. I've been working from home tonight, but I clocked out in the middle of that. Anyway.
Okay. David's up next.
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Sound good.
Fantastic. All right. So okay. So like I said in the chat that I was going to read similar to Jake. I was going to read like a rough draft, but then immediately like I'm talking the millisecond after I sent that, I was like, oh wait, no, I'm way too much of a coward to do that. Like reading a rough draft in front of a bunch of people that's also being recorded. So instead, I realized I also have a poem which I have completed. Like it's something that I think is like actually pretty good. It's called it's a fairly short one too. It's called Echoes and Reflections. A wind blows inside a cave. It carries the past. I'm sorry for what I did. I didn't mean to. The wind flows throughout. Stalactites fall to the floor from the weight of the regret it carries. I'm sorry for what I did. I didn't mean to. A mirror of diamond shakes as the wind blows by from the weight of the regret it carries. Can you ever forgive me? A mirror of diamond shakes as the wind blows by. A girl can be seen inside, sitting in the passenger seat. You will never forgive me. The anguished wind goes on bouncing off the walls. A girl is sitting in the passenger seat. A boy can be seen driving and thinking. The anguished wind goes on bouncing off the walls. It's all my fault. I made it this way. A boy can be seen driving and thinking, I fucked it all up. I ruined everything. It's all my fault. I made it this way. The cave shakes, the mirror cracks, the scene shatters. I fucked it all up. I ruined everything. The wind picks up the shatter. It echoes as the cave shakes. The core of the rocks quake. Pieces of the mirror jitter on the ground. The wind picks up the shatter. It echoes further in the cave, growing meeker. Pieces of the mirror lay still on the ground, two large shards separate from each other. Further in the cave, growing meeker, the shatter turns to a whimper as one shard longs for the reflection of the other. The shard finds its reflection empty. The whimper turns to a whisper in the wind as it blows through the cave. The mirror's shard longs to find a reflection for itself and fill its empty pane with color.
Wow, that was beautiful. Your delivery was
Thank you.
Unbelievable. Just absolutely fantastic. You really, the poem was already like extremely expressive, you know, and evocative, but your delivery really, really sold the emotion of the piece. So thank you so much for reading.
Yeah, you killed that delivery. That was definitely crazy. Felt that.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for reading. Rudy, I haven't been watching the chat. Did anyone else say they wanted to read here?
It doesn't. I don't think so. If anybody else wants to jump in, though, jump in.
If not, Rudy, did you want to read your piece, or I could? I guess I could read the little bit from the thing I'm working on too. Depends.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm just actually going to refill my glass here real quick, and I'll be right back.
Well, it's so earnest. Whenever you refill your glass of iced tea, it's just nice. It's heartwarming.
It is. It's really wholesome. Like when he goes to refill the glass.
The good vibes.
At some point, shouldn't he just get a bigger glass, though?
I was going to say something about I was going to say
That would
something
be
about a pitcher.
compromising his ideals. I don't know about that.
Yeah, and then he wouldn't be drinking iced tea out of a Moscow Mule mug,
No,
too.
and that is the cyber writer's lament. But
True.
What's the cyber writer's lament?
just if you don't know, it's tough to explain. Sorry.
You had to be there.
God damn! I'll have to watch the video.
Get
one additional view from me. That'll help our metrics. Anyway, so I guess I'll read a piece that sorry, I guess sorry, I gotta pull it up here. I guess I'll read a piece that I published on Misery Tourism earlier this week. This is basically a chapter from a novel that I guess I've been working on for the past couple of weeks. Not going to offer too much in the way of context here, except to say that it's based on, well, it's inspired by the Cadaver Synod, which basically in the very darkest parts of the Dark Ages, there was this period where they dug up a dead pope and put his body on trial. Basically, that's all. They put his corpse on trial, and obviously he was found guilty because he couldn't defend himself. And then they mutilated his corpse and threw it in a river. So basically, this is somewhat loosely inspired by that. I mean, I didn't put it in the chat, did I? Just a second, I'll drop it in the chat. The young king's corpse is badly decayed. Decomposition happens rapidly in the capital, where the summers are suffocating and the winters are sterile, neither warm nor cold, not humid or dry, and windless. This is what I've been told. I haven't seen the remains myself, nor have I lived in this city long enough to have a working internal almanac. Though what I have experienced, 2 weeks of late summer, a month of fall, has indeed been oppressive. All of the vassals who have lived their entire lives here tell me how lucky I am to have arrived during the gentlest months of the year. It's gorgeous, one noble lady told me. Her face and name elude me now, either because of her makeup or my failing memory. There must be so much more color here than on the frontier, where I've heard you only have a single week of green followed by 6 weeks of brown and an eternity of white. I didn't bother to correct her. She was close enough to the truth. And who knows if it would have been appropriate to tell her how uncomfortable I was at that moment in a fabricated garden that looked so much like so many others, harassed by the glare from a sun that was as low as you'd expect from autumn, but yet somehow was as hot as summer. Is it a breach of courtly manners to say that the king is sweating? Or maybe it's one of those things you can say if you're the king. Either way, why put her in an awkward position? The Lord suffers in his people's place. My anguish is the relief of many. Maybe it would be to the benefit of mankind if I perspired blood. Why am I complaining about the weather? Its age. We grow more and more uncomfortable with this world the closer we get to leaving it, so that death can be a blessing, a relief. I tell myself this. Who knows if it's true? They, the court, the apprehensive they that constrains that constrains the royal we, do not want me to go to the house where the corpse is being prepared for trial. They're afraid that R, both the royal R, meaning only me and all the abstract virtues that I'm supposed to signify, and the literal R, referring to the throng of necessary non-entities that now follow me everywhere for ceremonial and practical reasons that I mostly do not understand. They do not, sorry, they're afraid that our presence would be functionally identical to public declaration of the body's location. I never know how to I love to stick those massive clauses in the middle of sentences, but when I'm reading it, I never know how to handle that. Anyway, we fear insurrection. What if someone still loyal to him sneaks in at night and spirits the body away? What if they counterfeit a resurrection? What if they put his skeleton in a cage and mount the cage to a pole and march through the streets with it held high, advocating revolution? What if they rub his femur against some old peasant's club foot, or crush his fingers into dust and mix it with spit and make a paste to spread on a child's scabby eyes? And what if, after doing this or that, they get the miracle they were hoping for? No one mentioned this last possibility, not to me, but I've considered it for them, and it scares me more than any of the others, so I do not go. Instead, I've been presented with a written report on the body's condition. I try to read it clinically, reminding myself that I have a duty to separate the germane from the morbid. The friar who prepared the report has done me no favors in this regard, and seems perversely interested in describing the little that is left of the man as meticulously and artfully as possible. I've been told that on the southwestern frontier there's an enormous purple flower that smells like a cadaver. Something about his prose reminds me of this. I skim. He is mostly bone, adorned in scattered spots with shreds of colorless, desiccated skin. His hair is entirely gone, a relief to my imagination. All of his organs have rotted away or been consumed by larval beetles, aside from his spleen, which is withered and dry, but otherwise intact. I'm sure this last detail is significant. Why would one piece of a man petrify while the rest putrefies? I'm most confident that God is not dead or asleep when I'm faced with an event that's simultaneously arbitrary and improbable. My prejudices are transcended. I'm humbled. I close my eyes to visualize that withered organ and instead glimpse the immortality of the soul. But all the advisors I've asked have given me answers that transparently pander to what they think I want to hear. One religious scholar told me that the spleen was the seat of demonic possession. Demons, he said, obviously cannot reside in the human heart. That's out of the question. And they must feed. They have bodily needs, just as we do. The spleen is right next to the stomach, you know, and it's darker, purple, almost black really, and more vile than the other organs. So it's a perfect location. It, the evil spirit I mean, can squat there in the organic gloom and steal its host's food right from their belly. This is why demoniacs almost always suffer from indigestion. And of course the demon, or more probable in this case, demons, survived their host, trapped, starving, and desperate with no available exit. So you can understand why even the maggots want nothing to do with his spleen. I could hear the improvisation in the cadence of his speech. There's a difference between the pauses and intonation of an educated man who is straining to remember truths that he read in a book once, years ago, and those of a practiced liar fabricating a convincing anti-reality on the spot. He was bullshitting me. A physician I consulted was more concise. The spleen is where the body stores excess vice, he offered, which, as I'm sure you know, the dead man, they are always careful not to say dead king, had in abundance. Of course it's inedible. I don't understand medicine. I'm not sure that I believe in medicine, but this felt false and contrived, even by the standards of doctors. Hell, spleens just taste like shit, one of my cooks interjected. He had overheard my conversation with the physician while awaiting an opportunity to read me a dinner menu that consisted almost entirely of foreign delicacies that he had no idea how to pronounce and which I couldn't have recognized regardless. Don't know if bugs can taste, but I bet they can. You can make a meal with almost any piece of meat. Not the goddamn spleen, though. The paltriness of their explanation strengthens my faith. God is quiet, but close. I've been praying again at night, when I'm alone and there's no incentive to put on a public display of piety. For the first time in years, sometimes I pray to God, sometimes to my wife or my son, sometimes to any dead thing that can still hear. There has been a debate within the court about the optics of the mock execution of a man who is already so visibly dead. I've been advised that a beheading is out of the question, or at least that someone would have to contrive a clever means of reattaching his skull to his spine without visible ropes or lines, so that it won't simply fall off when they lay his head on the block. There has to be something for the axe to sever. Hanging presents even more apparent obstacles. I'm told there isn't enough glue in all the lands under my dominions to reattach all of his bones to their mates in a way that would allow him to convincingly dangle from a noose. It's not as impractical as you might think, a palace philosopher, respected for his unflinching empiricism, who's become monomaniacally obsessed with the glue problem, delivered a lecture to me exclusively and inescapably, outlining his proposed solution. The war has left us with so many dead horses. Their corpses are rotting in pits and ditches throughout the kingdom. And there are remote villages where they have simply been left to molder wherever they fell, despoiling wells and stinking up common pastures. Some farmers are so fatigued and demoralized that they are simply plowing around them because they don't have the energy to drag them from their fields, or because they've seen so much death that it doesn't even occur to them that the bloated carcasses do not belong. We could send envoys with drays to collect as many of these corpses as they can and bring them to some designated barren place near the capital and boil their bones and hooves in a massive trench there. You would have more glue than you could ever use and a more sanitary nation, less haunted by the white of animal death to boot. I momentarily considered rescinding his patronage, but thanked and dismissed him instead. Other traditional methods of dispatchment had their shortcomings. Drawing and quartering was out of the question for much the same reason as hanging. Additionally, it would require live horses, which are harder to come by than dead ones. Defenestration, one advisor gleefully noted, is not dramatically effective if the condemned cannot scream. Stoning is archaic, but has the added perk of crowd participation, and thus crowd complicity. Yes, but stoning invokes martyrdom, an admittedly astute counselor rebuffed. I remained mute as I listened to their suggestions, reminding myself that sometimes silence is the same as gravitas. or at least that it's more dignified than equivocation. I limited my interjections to brief, practical questions, seeking clarity on issues of pomp and procedure. Confidants and theorists came and went, innominate and blurred, consumed by speculative moaning. Poltergeists rearranging my perspective in disquieting but worthless ways. One evening, two of them, whoever they were, had an endless dialogue on costuming and stage direction. Should we give him a crown? Does that denote too much authority? Would we be retroactively legitimizing his role? How would anyone recognize him otherwise? He doesn't have a face. We could have an artist craft a mask and put it over his skull, base it on one of his portraits, but exaggerated, grotesque, true to his soul, if not his body. That way he should be remembered, the way he should be remembered, before he's forgotten. All of his portraits have already been burned. Then how about coins? Thousands were minted during his reign. Some must survive. Coins? Sure, they're coins. Coins could work perfectly. They're already caricatures, already propaganda. There's nothing there that might inadvertently inspire compassion in the audience, nothing human. Just tell the mask maker to take everything regal and make it profane. This sounded nonsensical to me, completely abstract and rootless, impossible to implement. Each word was tethered to nothing but the word before it, and tethered with nothing but autoerotic zeal. I felt my throat tighten. I didn't speak, but I did close my eyes slowly and pressed the edge of my folded hands to my forehead, touching the thumbs to my lower lip. I hoped they would see me. I was watched constantly, my facial tics and tremors interpreted remorselessly, and understand my aggravation and stop without me having to exercise and, by extension, abuse my power. They continued. And are we going to dress him up? We can't just prop him up in his burial shroud. We have to think carefully about how we clothe him. Every sartorial decision is significant. Different colors, in particular, bear different connotations. White is straight out, obviously. Red and purple convey too much majesty. Black? You would think that would be a good choice, but no. Black is too intimidating, and worse, it signifies mourning. We don't want anyone to get the wrong idea and think it's appropriate to grieve for him. Grief is only a half step short of worship. You have the genesis of a cult right there. All right. How about green? Like a putrid, moldy green, something really rotten looking. Do you think your average pissant peasant can discriminate between mildew green and the color of the woods in late spring? In trying to get them to picture death, they'll imagine a rebirth instead. Yellow. Piss yellow. Oh, right. Energized by this moment of mutual epiphany, they escalated. The conversation turned to materials. Silk was quickly eliminated, but there was a protracted debate about whether to opt for a fabric that was simple and communicated nothing about the body status, cotton, wool, or if he should be outfitted with hemp rags or a hairsuit to emphasize his humiliation. It struck me as a profound misunderstanding of the purpose of a hair shirt to put one on a mostly skinless skeleton, but I didn't say so, allowing the tension at the edges of my eyes to speak for me. I let my mind drift, heard only pieces of their discourse on different stitches and hems and how the wrong sorts of loops or embroidery could falsely foreshadow the method of execution, not yet decided at this point. A quick consensus was reached on whether his finger bones should be adorned with rings. Absolutely not. Any displays of his coat of arms or seal were likewise nixed. I was almost entirely oblivious to lengthy exchange about the martial implications of leather boots. By the time I was cognizant again, they were deliberating about seats. There's a monastery a short distance from here, 2 days, possibly 3 with inclement weather, that has a chair made entirely from human bones. What? Why? It's a meditative aid. The monks sit in it and reflect on the brevity of life. But isn't that a desecration to rest your dirty ass on the sanctified remains of dead men? Do they shit in the chair as well? Wipe themselves with the dried tongues of martyrs? The bones are from condemned criminals, murderers, rapists, deserters. Their souls are damned. What do their bodies mean to them? Still seems obscene to me. And do we want to risk drawing attention away from the bones that matter? How many bones can one gawking tanner see and truly comprehend? It muddies the damnation of the one being tried, invites too many comparisons between his crimes and those of the men he'd be seated upon. But don't we want to encourage those comparisons? Don't we want to debase him? Let them see his remains besides those of degenerates of lower social status. See if they can tell the difference. The difference is he won't be a fucking stool. I made the choices that I could. There would be no crown and absolutely no chair made of bones, but he would wear the mask. It must cover his entire face, his entire skull. Sure, he could wear a yellow cotton robe. Symbolism aside, it was practical. No rings, barefoot. String would suffice to hold him together enough and upright enough to mock the appearance that he was seated. The method of execution didn't need to be decided until the whole ordeal was over. We still had time to choose. At night, after prayer, I try to visualize the full trial chronologically and then holistically, to parse through the necessary steps sequentially, anticipating screw-ups and scandals, and then to draw my imagined vision upwards and backwards, straining to sense the feel of the thing in its entirety, to anticipate the immediate intestinal reaction of the spectator, who would become the mob. Instead, I see the skull, half wrapped in half-painted papier-mâché, the skeletal hand resting nude on the skeletal chair, the spleen. And that's it. That was a lot longer than I thought. Sorry.
That was great.
Thanks. I'm
gonna let you finish, but there was actually a name and a proper name used in that story. Gasp.
Wait, there was?
There was. There was a name used in that story.
There was really?
Nope, an actual name.
There was okay.
Honest to goodness name. No shit.
Okay. What was it?
God.
Flaxen.
Oh.
But no, that was awesome.
That's true.
You should definitely finish that. Finish him.
I actually made a choice not to use Christ. I like to use I like to use Christ a lot when I write, and it's actually hard for me, like as an exclamation, right?
Yeah.
I had to make a conscious choice not to, because I thought that would be like, oh, it's happening in like our world, in our Middle Ages or whatever.
Yeah, I mean the setting is cool because, like I mentioned in the chat, like it's a really dark fantasy world, but without like the heroic type things like Conan, shit. But it's like Conan without the heroes and shit. And so, like I said, like in a high fantasy world, like they just glamour his corpse with a spell or something. But in this, it's like, well, they don't really. It doesn't seem like they really have that kind of thing at their disposal. So it's kind of scarcity, like a magical scarcity deal or whatever. Like they don't have those things, so it makes it more gritty and dark. And I like that.
I mean, I just really love the I'm like obsessed with like the mundane, like petty ante, like politics of trying to execute something like this, because it seems like it's so absurd on its face, Yeah. On the one hand, it's awesome to think about, like especially since something comparable to it actually happened. Like they actually dug up a dead pope and put his body on trial. but it raises so many like weird, like petty questions. And like to me, those petty questions are way more interesting than
Mm.
like whatever ecclesiastical or territorial issue was actually at stake, you know?
Right, right.
I also like how the neuroses of the dialogue, externally and internally, like I really loved the first time that I read this. Now hearing it, how that all that build up, all these petty differences or whatever that they're having about how to do something, and then the awful thing is done. So it's like you're seeing that the build up to that awful thing is actually just two people talking about it as if they are putting on a play or a theater or whatever. Like I really like how mundane the build up to something horrific is.
Yeah, I thank you. I really, that was something I was really like really very much trying to figure out a way to communicate, like the banality of it all. Like to me, the banality of it is way more interesting than like the horror of it. Just because it's like so silly, it's so funny to think about. It's so like inherently absurd. And I don't know, that one thing like I always try to do in my writing, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, is to like find that balance between like real honest to goodness like existential horror and just like the comic absurdity and like banality that we're assaulted with most of the time, right? Because to me life is like a whole bunch of silly absurd shit happens until suddenly something absolutely terrifying happens, and then a bunch of really absurd banal shit happens, and the cycle just kind of repeats itself. So
No, the farce was like really well done in that, because it was like you've got the farce of the whole putting the dead body on trial for a show trial, and then you've got the farce of like monarchy and the king, and he's, you know, got divine right or whatever, but he's can't tell the person that he's sweating, and he doesn't really know what's going on, and he has a headache, and all these people are arguing around him, and there's all of this intellectual power going towards how do we prop this guy up.
how do we keep his fingers from falling off, right? How do we keep his head?
I meant prop the king up, but yeah, prop the corpse up too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think as far as like the like narrator is concerned, I'm trying I'm trying to do something that's like unusual for me, which is I'm trying to write from the perspective of someone who is kind of inherently a good, well-intentioned guy, which but who is like incapable of seeing through like the fog of like mysticism and stupidity. And you know, I think like there's this like odd phenomenon in history where you have a lot of like kings who are rulers who end up kind of having power sort of thrust upon them late in life. Like I think like there's this Roman emperor, I think his name was Vespasian or something, and he was just this general in kind of like the frontier, and then Nero killed himself and the empire fell, and like 3 other guys vied for the position of emperor, and they all ended up dying after either like seizing power and then being overthrown or whatever. And then Vespasian kind of slowly worked his way out from the frontier and just kind of had power thrust on him, and ended up being like one of Rome's more benevolent emperors. Ended up being like, and it's kind of like, I don't know, this kind of fascination with people who have in that kind of position. Like you have in fantasy especially, you have all these myths about like good kings and heroic figures and shit, and it's always like their heroism is a function of some kind of inherent nobility or their ability to overcome odds, or like their ability in like martial combat or whatever. You don't often have like people who are maybe legitimately well-intentioned rulers who are just trying to like navigate the like morass of court drama and the stupidity of life, right? And I don't know. But
Well, that's one of
anyway,
the benefits of monarchy, right? Is that you,
anyway, Rudy, I saw Ira and Rudy. Did I miss anyone? Okay. Rudy, do you want to take it up next?
I think Ira wants to go. I believe.
Okay, Ira, it's all yours. Oh, okay, no problem. No, it's fine. It's fine. Oh, I think Ira's having mic trouble, so you can go, Rudy.
Ira's just a bit
Okay.
flaccid, as they say.
Flaccid. Oh boy. Yeah, let me pull up the piece here. Does this link work?
Yep, works for me.
Fuck
Great.
yes, this is some cyber writing. Seriously. Sorry.
Yeah,
Oh,
no.
Rudy, do you want me to? Sorry, do you want me to put this link on Twitter, or should I hold it since it's coming up later?
I was gonna say you can hold that link. I mean, you can link to the one on the itch, I guess, since that's the download of the PDF.
Gotcha. Do you have that link by any chance?
I do. Hold on. Yep, I got it right here. Yep, that's the right one. Before I link this, I just want to say, perhaps this a content warning. This is about pedophilia and child abuse. So yeah.
Yeah, it's all yours, Rudy.
Okay, so this one is called Wandering Monster. Yeah, I think it starts on the 3rd page in the PDF. As a prestigious academic known for your work on many bestiaries, you have kept from the world a terrible secret. You like to fuck monsters. That isn't all. You've traveled to other countries, all part of the so-called monster block, using your encyclopedic knowledge of non-human cultures and customs to engage in sexual relations with creatures of all kinds, an obvious taboo, all of which were, under your home country's law, below the age of legal consent, 18. Something most would describe as grotesque, if not technically illegal. The tattered map you keep by your side while journeying has no place names. Instead, each kingdom, empire, and republic is denoted only by a single number, the age of consent within its borders. This is the story of your travels. You're there and back again. Though dragonfire and burglary probably aren't in your future, urethral burn and stolen kisses might be. Materials. To play, you need several pieces of 8.5 by 11 letter-sized paper, at least 7, a copy of this manual, at least the passport on page 4, a pencil and a marker, computer, a phone, or some public or portable device that can pull up an anagram generator, like the one linked here, 1 6-sided dice, some way of keeping time, and a few hours. This is a game for one person. The Lore Master. You are a tenured lore master, a spell-slinging ethnographer, embarking on a sex-filled journey into the monster lands that border your predominantly humanoid kingdom. But who exactly are you? Fill out the following passport. Also, consider this question. Why do you want to have sex with young monsters? You can take your time, even the whole game, answering this. The ecology of monsters. Owing to the work of specialist academics like yourself, a great deal is known about the different monster species. Once thought to be merely cursed perversions of the human image, as the old text put it, it is now understood that monsters are more of a fusion of man, beast, and other, and the physiological reasons for this are gradually being illuminated. Like humans, monsters grow in age over time. A monster is born, not made by sorcery or fell deeds as once thought, to parents of its type, and is, for the early periods of its life, largely human in physical appearance and temperament. To say that the younger a monster is, the more human it is may be a gross oversimplification, but this is at least superficially true. As monsters age, they acquire more of the signature monstrous traits of their fellows. Deeplings sprout gills, minotaurs develop bovine snouts and hooves, orckin slide increasingly towards aggression. This makes pubescent monsterhood a truly strange, fraught time. It is this liminal state of being that fascinates you most, both academically and sexually. A map. Divide your blank sheet of paper into 7 distinct sections using the marker. These are the 7 sovereign territories of this world. In the rightmost section, draw a picture in pencil of the city where your arcane university resides. This is the human kingdom, the territory you hail from. All others are part of the monster bloc, a group of countries notable for their majority non-human populations. Write the number 18 and marker in the section containing the human kingdom. Observe this array of numbers, 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8. Write each one of these, again using marker, in any of the other sections you've made, 1 number per section. Use each number only once. Cross it off after you use it. All numbers denote the different age of consent laws that govern the territory in which they sit. For our purposes, age of consent means age at which one can legally consent to sexual activity. Fill out the map by drawing terrain, points of interest, landmarks, and buildings within each of the sections. Always draw in pencil. Draw the map in any perspective you like, and don't worry about the quality of the illustration. Continue until you've drawn something inside each territory section. Try to cover the entire paper. A journey. Begin by picking a territory adjacent to the human kingdom. Imagine traveling overland to get there. Moving between territories could take weeks or even months. How do you do it? Horse, cart, zeppelin, water ship, on foot? No teleportation. The journey itself, sightseeing, aching feet, sleeping rough, is part of the experience. Put your map to the side. Grab another piece of paper. On the top of it, write travel log and the number corresponding to the territory you're currently traveling through. Spend 10 minutes writing about your journey. What cool things do you do? What were the sights, smells, sounds you encountered? Which local foods do you savor? Write a sentence or two about the cultural do's and don'ts of each territory. Sketch pictures of things if you'd like, flora, artifacts, knickknacks from a corner bodega. Write as if you have an audience, as if your knowledge is arcane and valuable. Be descriptive, be explanatory. Who knows, maybe you'll publish this travel log through the university press when you get home. After 10 minutes of writing, it's night. Monsters thrive at night, and because of this, so do you. You're in the mood. How do you come across the monster you're going to sleep with tonight? Do you pull them aside on the street, strike up a conversation at an inn, or visit a den you've been to before? Who is this monster to you? Do you know their kin? The monster is of legal age, just barely. When was their birthday? Describe the physicality of the adult form of the monster to yourself out loud. You may have had only an amorphous figure in your mind until this moment. Tentacles, spider-like appendages, some vague bestial chases. But now you should flesh that out. Use the inspiration chart linked below if needed. Consider how the adult form is different from the pubescent version. Courtship behaviors vary wildly amongst monster cultures, and your education, expertise, and general travels have given you insight into these that few other human beings have. So what form does your courting take? Safety first. How might fucking this monster be immediately dangerous to you? Are there any particular spatial or mechanical concerns that need to be addressed before bedding down? If you need a special harness to copulate with your lover, now is the time to get it. As mentioned before, you're a connoisseur of pubescent monsters due to their savory mix of human and monster traits. How do this one's burgeoning monster features combine with elements of humanity to turn you on? Another map. Enough querying. Flip the piece of paper on which you wrote your travel log over to the reverse side. Draw a picture of the monster's naked body. Take up the whole piece of paper and be gratuitous in your details. Using your marker, divide it into 6 regions. Imagine something, a smell, a taste, a sound, a texture, a sensation that defines each region. You don't have to do this for any area containing the monster's face. Write one word to describe the region. Cold, pungent, burning, stony, roses, sherbet, mossy, that distills the sensory data. Using your index and middle fingers like legs, meander across the landscape of the young monster's body. As you move through each region, imagine you're a surveyor lovingly exploring and cataloging unfamiliar topography. Using the words you came up with, paint a picture of each region's details in your head. Consider the curves, the dips, the crevices of the monster's form. Any points of interest? Birthmarks, scars, tribal markings, anything. Where do you linger longest? Whenever you're touching the monster's face with a finger, imagine their expression, their response to whatever region you're touching. Whenever both fingers are touching its face, blurt out the first words that come to mind. Remember what you blurted out. You'll need it shortly. Dance around the page with your fingers and let strange images, positions, gestures, scrunched up faces cavort in your mind's eye. Monsters are nothing if not weird. This is your sex crawl, so be as weird as you want. When you think you're finished, cleanse your palate with science. State one fact about the ecology of the monster you just fucked. For example, this monster dwells in deep underground caverns. Its bright bioluminescence is a product of that. To cap things off, turn any of the phrases you blurted out into anagrams using the program you have open, taking care that they sound clinical and scientific. Your anagram must use real dictionary words. Use any of these anagrams to label an organ that is enclosed by the region of the picture that you gave the most attention to. The anagram is now the scientific name for that particular organ. Do this multiple times if you'd like. Interruption. It's over. You just rolled off your partner. Well, what's this? Something stirs. Roll your 6-sided dice once and consult the following chart. Result of 1. Nothing at all. You fall fast asleep. Result of 2. You encounter a wild local beast that threatens you. How do you dispatch it? Result of 3. A message from across the aether interrupts your thoughts. It's university business. Blurt out a terse response. What questions does your frustrated vocalization elicit from your partner? Result of 4. You encounter a colleague and must awkwardly explain to them what you're doing in Monsterland. What is your professional relationship to this person? How do you explain yourself to make them leave? Result of 5. You encounter someone the young monster knows who expresses disapproval about you fucking them. What is their relationship to the monster? What's something they say that sticks with you for the rest of your journey? Result of 6. You reflect on the morality of fucking young monsters. Am I hurting this poor creature? Whose face do you see when you reflect on what you're doing? Homeward bound. Repeat the journey, another map, and interruption sections of the game until you've made your way through all the territories. On additional journeys, travel to new, unexplored territory adjacent to the one you're currently in. When you finish, the game is over. Consider the following questions. How did the initial placement of the numbers affect what kinds of features you drew in each of the map sections? Any regrets? What is your return home like? Adventures are over, so set down your walking staff, put your map on the shelf, and see about getting those travel logs published. And there's a footnote. Post your maps and rad pics of monster penises to hashtag MonsterRauncher2K19 if you dare. Grooming a new apprentice. Locate a friend who knows nothing about this game. Hand them a copy of this manual and explain the premise. See if it's something they'd be interested in playing. If they're willing, hand them the map you made and ask them to use it in lieu of making a whole new one of their own. Hand them your journal. Ask them what they think the labels of the monster parts, the anagrams, mean as far as the parts function. Ask how they think the parts affect sex. Convey these rules to them. They will become another lore master with similar predilections. What are the odds? Who is embarking on another monster fucking journey some 30 years after yours. They can add new things to the map or update details that have changed since you took your journey. While they should keep your own journals distinct, distinct from yours, they can add new parts to the anatomical drawings that you made. The answers that they gave to your earlier questions, what do these monster parts do, are now canon and should inform their narratives. Tell them the names of some of the monsters you fucked. Maybe they can find out what became of them. Their journey ends when they visited all 6 of the areas, after which they can then themselves train an apprentice and pass down their knowledge. And the last page is just the inspiration chart to be used with another map section. And that's it.
So, first of all, I love how it's just absolute. I've read this a few times. I know the story behind this, but I love just how absolutely like vicious and uncompromising the like satire of like tabletop RPGs, and especially like pretentious single player tabletop RPGs here is here. One detail that I only caught now when you were reading is you actually define the age of consent as if it's a mechanic in the game. And I think that moment alone really captures like every hilarious thing that you're doing here. Like, that's so good. Like,
yeah, I mean, extra points for if you know what the range of the age of consent, what those numbers are.
Yeah, there. I mean, I do, and I think that you have to be like a real. You'd have to be a serious D&D nerd to get that.
Yeah, it's basically, so when you create a character in D&D, there's character ability scores. That's the range of the array of the fair
Standard
character
array,
score.
right?
Standard array of character scores. But yeah, I mean, if anybody has questions about the game, I definitely answer them. But this one provoked a little bit of controversy on the contest or whatever, the game jam I submitted it to, because it was probably not the right place to submit the game like this. I mean, it was.
Did you? I don't know. Maybe I missed it, but did you say what contest you created this for and what contest you submitted this to?
No, it was a game jam called Mapamundi, and the topic of the game jam was maps, to create a games that use maps. Most games that use maps are hex crawls or whatever, so like a dungeon on like a big grid paper where you crawl around and each square is a different monster or whatever. The idea of a wandering monster is something from D&D that's basically that. I mean, it's used for that. And yeah, there's another term for the word maps too. That's kind of how I put my spin on their thing, because they said maps. So yeah, let's.
And I mean, to your credit, you integrated the more conventional sense of the term too. So I don't see why. I have no idea, given how much care you took to explore the subject matter. Oh. I have no idea why you were banned from that channel.
Now, just one more thing. When I made this, I guess my philosophy, and I think part of William's philosophy too, and when we make games or design really anything, is that the act of play should be central to the design, whatever. A lot of games that deal with subject matter like this, it's heavy shit. I mean, it's heavy subject matter. It's child abuse and stuff. So, I mean, a lot of games that deal with it in a very, very didactic, serious kind of way. But I just this was, I'm not shitting on those games. I'm just saying this was a different approach that I felt was more like kind of, playing with blocks or something. Just see how the blocks fall. I'll see how things, come apart. Basically, that's what I was trying to do with this design.
And I will honestly say that one thing that I really do like about the piece, if you don't see it as being like a satire of basically like pretentious indie RPGs, and you take it at face value, it actually is a really really like brutally uncompromising exploration of like the evil of the subject matter, in that it like forces the player into complicity, right? You could imagine a game that covers the same subject matter that, I mean, obviously the one approach would be to have it be presented from the victim's perspective and have it be couched in a lot of like, hashtag safe language. But another approach would be to do something like this and to be like constantly telling the player that they're evil rather than having them like perform evil. Like not truly, but within like their imagination, right? The fact that they have to draw these images and they have to run their fingers over them and they have to like indulge in the evil act in some way forces them into a real kind of complicity here, which makes me think no one would actually ever play the game on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's far better, I think, than a game where evil is like abstracted and obvious, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even outside of the like gameplay aspect, just as like a piece of writing, if you're to look at the piece like that, it I think the format of it being game rules, and there's that sort of detachment from the morality of the act, really kind of puts you in the mindset of like how actual like if you were to look at like real sexual predators, you know what I mean? They're not, their victim is abstract, and they're not actually thinking of them as like they're monsters in a game. You know what I mean? Like,
right, yeah.
It's totally about their goal and their satisfaction of playing their game. And I think that kind of the two channels running through that in this is really good.
Cool. Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I totally agree with I agree with that, and I in addition to that, like the fact that you make him an academic too really like doubles down on that kind of abstraction that Jake is talking about, right? Because not only is there like the sense of you as a player in the game experiencing this character as just a monster, but also he views them as just this kind of clinical like subject of observation, except in those few moments you get during the chart that you roll on, which is a great little parody of a wandering monster chart, right? Where you roll to see what emotional response you have after you've committed this act. Instead of, it's like, which of my personal demons do I encounter? I thought that was great. But
Well,
I
yeah.
do like that like sense of abstraction there, like it's made so yeah, I'm rambling them. Yeah, anyway, thank you. I thank you for saving one of your choicest pieces for your birthday.
Too much iced tea.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yum.
It is actually iced tea, by the way. If anyone's wondering, I do not use substances to become incoherent. Anyway,
Have you had the Arizona Arnold Palmer?
I don't drink. I never have.
No, but it's not alcoholic.
Oh,
That's that Arizona a nice tea. I've had that, the Arnold Palmer. Yeah.
Yeah, have you had that?
That is really good.
How sick is that? And it's like $1, like whatever.
Yeah, it's like gas station favorite shit. Like,
Yeah.
where I go to Stewart's, I grab one of those.
William, I was trying to relate, man. It's
Sorry,
not
I
all,
don't.
it's not all drugs and alcohol for me. Like I
I'm
do
sorry.
try the honestly though, Donald Palmer. Like, yeah, it's a clap. You gotta try it and let me know what you think.
Yeah, next time I'm in a gas station, I'll hunt down a bottle. So Ira, are you still with us? Have you survived this long?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I enjoyed that. I actually wrote about the same thing. It's kind of awkward.
What Arnold Palmer's?
That Rudy wrote about.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, well, here's a link. It's like autofiction essay about a hypersexual child. And
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. It's called The First.
Sorry, just quickly. Usually I post links to the pieces on Twitter, but I wasn't sure. Is this
Oh, I'm
something
sorry.
you want me to share the link to? Because I don't know if it's been published. If you're looking to have it published somewhere, so I don't want.
I hadn't thought about that. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know if I can give you a link after this.
Yeah, sure. No
Okay.
problem.
One that won't expire in an hour. Okay. Yeah, it's called The First Time. From a very young age, I was obsessed with sex. I was like this years before I could even get hard. I have some additional theories that won't be mentioned here as to why this might be, all based on the same foggy timeline, but I'm not comfortable sharing them. Either way, I was fascinated by the act, but in a completely non-sexual way. In some ways, I still am, and in the same fashion. I probably have an average sex drive, but I still find myself thinking about sex pretty frequently without a bit of arousal. It's like there's sex, the act, and then sex in the abstract. And I find the latter so much more interesting. The first time I saw two people fucking was in The Fly, during that scene where Gina Davis is riding Jeff Goldblum's dick, or pretending to ride it, I'm not sure. I asked my older brother what they were doing, and he said, they're having sex, and I didn't ask any more questions. Television softcore was my only experience for the longest time, and it mostly made me uncomfortable. I watched a James Bond film in a hotel room with my older brother and older cousin sometime after that, and it was my first experience with locker room talk. I had never heard people who weren't adults use so many curse words and talk about the things that they talked about that night as I sat there mostly silent. James Bond began to make love to whatever Bond girl was in that movie, and the 13-year-old child my uncle had raised said, I don't know why they edit out all the good parts on TV when they know we just want to see some titties. I inferred what titties were. The first time I saw a woman naked was when my divorced dad was cleaning out his apartment, getting ready to move into a house in the suburbs. He was cleaning out under the sink and pulled out a solved puzzle board featuring a brunette woman with nothing covering her skin but a long, illustrious fur coat and a very full 70s bush. The juxtaposition of these two features was what got me. Dad threw it in the trash can outside, but I kept sneaking out into the light drizzle, opening the lid slightly and taking another peek at this woman. Suddenly it seemed to me like I had uncovered some animalistic facet of human nature that I had no clue of before. I couldn't stop looking and I didn't know why. From there, I began to seek out every piece of analog pornography I could get my small hands on. I'd sneak into my mom and stepdad's room when they were gone and go through his Playboys he had in the closet and their mail-order catalogs full of lingerie and sex toys and graphic demonstrations. I would rent Friday the 13th films on VHS and study the sex scenes that were still softcore but definitely harder than anything on television. When I was at my dad's house, my brother would often be at his girlfriend's house, and I would stay down in his room playing on that beige desktop computer he had sitting on the floor. I would tiptoe around used condoms he left laying on the floor and open the drawers in his room to find his porno mags. One time, I saw a photoshopped picture of Eminem in one of the magazines, sitting with his legs slightly splayed and a sad 4-inch erect penis sticking out of him. The caption read, No wonder he's so angry. As far as I was concerned, the editor of this magazine had actually convinced Eminem to ignore any probable insecurities, remove his pants, and show his tiny little cock off to God and everyone. I didn't want to listen to Eminem as much anymore after this. The first time I saw internet porn was at a friend's house, maybe around 2006. We had been playing Pokemon, and he got up and turned on the family desktop and motioned for me to come over. He went on a website called google.com, pulled up a picture of a fit man with an enormous 8 or 9 inch dick having sex with a wifeish looking woman. I didn't understand why my prepubescent dick was so tiny in comparison to this man. I'm not sure if this still bothers me or not. I found out later that, despite him clearing his browser history, his father eventually discovered this habit. His father was a balding Lutheran pastor, so I wondered what the conversation must have been like. The first time I had a girlfriend was when I was 13. I was at a middle school dance and her friends came to me and told me that she wanted me to be her boyfriend. I had never even seen or heard of this girl before. Nonetheless, I went along with it because it seemed like what I should be doing. Plus, I didn't want people to think I was gay. We all got off for Christmas break the next week, and I managed to call her one time for about 5 minutes. I didn't want my parents to know I had a girlfriend because it seemed dirty and embarrassing to me. So I went out into the backyard with the cordless phone in 35 degrees Fahrenheit. After that, I forgot that I technically had a girlfriend, spent the rest of my break on YouTube. She broke up with me on MySpace a couple weeks of silence later and on the charge of emotional neglect, in spite of my last-minute appeals that I could do better. Later that night, I cried for some reason. The first time I actually fucked someone was in college, like most autistic males who do eventually manage to have sex. If you miss that window, it's a no-go usually. I don't like talking about real exploits in too much detail because it feels like weird macho bullshit. I do wish there was a way I could talk about sex more without having to actually talk about specific people and what we've done, though. It was with a friend of my roommates. She was sort of cute, but I thought she was sort of off-putting too. She was like a "where's my hug" type of guy, but was a girl. In general, you can get away with that kind of thing much easier when you're a girl, but not with me. I'm a genuine touch-me-not. I don't like to hug anyone I'm not in love with. I'm not sure if I even wanted to have sex with this girl, but I went along with it because it seemed like what I should be doing. So we did. It felt good to finally get it over with. Afterwards, I heard through the grapevine that she said something to the effect of, "All Joes are hot," referring to my dead name and presumably every other Joe she had ever met. I had just watched Goodfellas for the first time a month before having sex for the first time, and these two memories mixed poorly. From then on, whenever I thought back to losing my virginity, I would vividly imagine myself fucking her in her dorm room again, except I was 6 inches shorter, had a suit on, my black dress pants were laying on the floor around my ankles, and I looked and sounded exactly like Joe Pesci. I imagined I was Joe Pesci.
That was real as fuck. That was I love the ending, by the way. The ending was fucking incredibly brilliant. But no, just you have a real knack for, like, in autofiction sometimes it's tricky to separate out like what's kind of universally relatable and what's like the author's sort of unique quirks. This is like all like universally relatable shit here. Like every line is just like, it's funny, but it's funny in that way that like laughing at yourself is funny. You know, it feels, it's very sincere and honest in the way that it's hilarious. I just think it's really, really fucking good.
Thank you. I'm not a very experienced writer, so I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, no.
I actually wrote something down about the right specifically because you did something where you said he went on a website called google.com. And I thought the way this is all sort of like explaining to himself and he's learning sort of about all of, you know, the sexual stuff, whatever. I like how you didn't just say he went on Google. You know, like it fit with the same exact tone that like you went on google.com. Like it just does it in the same voice. Very.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I really like the like someone said, like Malone said, the era specificness of this, like how it captures like that time, not only in childhood but in like history or whatever. That and I really like William had said, I really love the end line. I imagine I was Joe Pesci.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know if I have a whole lot more to say about it because I pretty much said everything I wanted in it, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But
No, thank you so much for reading. And did anyone else want to read before I close this up here? No? Okay then. So I think I'll do what I usually do, which is I will stop recording in a second here, but I'll leave the Zoom call open if people want to bullshit, hang out, whatever. So anyway, yeah, if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, this has been Misery Loves Company, or at least the most recent edition of the Misery Loves Company social reading series. We do this every Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. If you want links to some of the pieces that were read, go on Twitter, look up Misery Tourism, at Misery Tourism on Twitter, and you'll find there's a thread for the reading with links to as many of the pieces as I could put up there. Anyway, thank you. A big thank you as usual to everyone who read, and thank you to anyone who, you know, took the time to watch this after the fact. Okay.